The alien girl wed a human to end the war, then saw him fight like a god. HFY. Among the many races caught in this chaos were the humans and the Valorians, a proud and powerful alien species known for their strict codes of honor and unmatched combat skill. Neither side had won a decisive victory, and the endless cycle of revenge and bloodshed had brought the galaxy to the brink of despair. In the heart of the Valorian capital, the Council of Elders convened in the Grand Hall of Stars. Their tall spires of crystal reflected the faint light of the war-torn sky outside, and their discussion was grave. The council debated strategies, defense plans, and ways to finally bring the humans to heel, but none of their plans promised a true end to the suffering. Then a young princess stood, her eyes sharp as a blade, her posture proud and unyielding. Lysara was the only daughter of the Valorian queen, and unlike the other nobles, she had grown up in the midst of battle, learning the art of combat and diplomacy in equal measure. She had never trusted humans, seeing them as weak, impulsive, and unworthy of respect. To her, they were fragile creatures with no true understanding of honor or strength. "Enough of these endless talks," Lysara said, her voice echoing through the hall. "We waste time. Peace will never come through words alone. Perhaps a different approach is needed, something that the humans cannot ignore." Her voice carried the weight of authority and wisdom. "Lysara, what do you propose?" It was unheard of, impossible even. But the queen considered it carefully, weighing the potential for lasting peace against tradition. Finally, she nodded. "If this is to happen, you will do it, for the sake of our people." But defiance would only bring punishment. She bowed her head, hiding her anger behind a mask of obedience. Meanwhile, across the galaxy on a human warship, Captain Jace was finishing another mission. He was a soldier renowned not only for his strength but for his strategic mind and unwavering courage. Tales of his daring feats had spread through the military, earning him respect among humans and fear among enemies. Jace had survived countless battles, facing alien warriors far stronger than most humans, yet he always returned victorious, carrying both skill and honor. When the news arrived that he was to be part of a union with the Valorian princess, Jace was skeptical. He had seen the horrors of war and knew the distrust between humans and Valorians was deep. Yet he accepted the mission, understanding that this union might be the key to ending the conflict. He would not just be a soldier this time. He would be a symbol, a bridge between two warring civilizations. The day of the journey arrived. The ceremonial ship glided silently through the stars, carrying Lysara and Jace toward the Valorian capital. The interior of the vessel was grand, adorned with alien symbols and shimmering lights. Lysara walked the halls with regal poise, but her eyes never left Jace. She watched him carefully, studying his movements, his posture, his every word. "Do you always walk so boldly?" she asked, her tone laced with mockery. Jace glanced at her, calm and measured. "I walk the way I was trained. Boldness can save lives, sometimes more than caution. And sometimes, survival teaches lessons that words never can." As they approached the Valorian capital, alarms sounded throughout the ship. A fleet of rogue Valorian warlords opposed to peace with humans had intercepted them. The ceremonial convoy was under attack. Lysara's first instinct was fear, but her training took over. She drew her weapon, preparing to defend herself. Jace moved instantly, coordinating the crew, directing defensive maneuvers and taking precise shots at the attacking vessels. His knowledge of combat and strategy was uncanny, and despite being outnumbered, the humans and Valorians aboard the ship managed to hold their ground. From her vantage point, Lysara watched as Jace leaped across the deck, his movements fluid, precise, almost superhuman. He protected the crew, deflected attacks, and made split-second decisions that saved lives. She realized, with a shock she tried to hide, that this human was not weak. He was extraordinary, but Lysara's pride would not allow her to admit it. She turned her gaze away, focusing on her own defensive maneuvers, yet she could not ignore the truth. The humans she had mocked, the ones she believed incapable of honor or skill, had a warrior unlike any she had seen. The battle lasted hours, though it seemed like minutes. Finally, the rogue warlords retreated, their ships damaged and morale shattered. The convoy was battered but intact, thanks to Jace's leadership. Lysara's respect for him began to grow, though she refused to acknowledge it aloud. When the ship finally landed in the capital, the citizens and soldiers watched in awe. They had expected a weak human, easily subdued by Valorian might. Instead, they saw a man who had fought like a god, protecting Valorians with courage, skill, and honor. Whispers spread across the city. This human was not ordinary. He was legendary. The ceremonial preparations for the wedding continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Lysara observed Jace more carefully now, noting how he interacted with Valorian soldiers and civilians. He did not mock their customs, he learned them. He respected their traditions without losing his own identity. Slowly, Lysara's anger began to mix with curiosity. She could not deny that there was something remarkable about this human. Yet, even with her growing respect, Lysara's pride would not allow her to lower herself completely. She maintained her sharp words, her critical gaze, and her attempts to challenge him. But inside she felt a flicker of something unfamiliar: admiration, wonder, perhaps even the first seeds of trust. That night, as the city slept under the twin moons, Lysara sat in her chamber, thinking of Jace. The war had forced them together, and tradition dictated their union, but she could not shake the image of him fighting with such power and grace. Her heart, trained to value strength above all, was unsettled. She had always believed humans were weak, yet here stood a man who defied every expectation. Jace, in his own quarters, reflected on the day as well. He understood the weight of what had just happened. Not only had he survived the ambush, but he had proven that humans were capable of greatness, even in the eyes of the Valorians. The mission ahead would not be easy. Gaining trust and ending the war required more than skill in battle. It required wisdom, patience, and courage of a different kind. The first part of their journey had ended, but the story was only beginning. The human and the princess, bound by duty and circumstance, would face challenges that tested their courage, their beliefs, and their very understanding of strength. For Lysara, it was the start of a transformation, a realization that the galaxy was far more complex than she had ever imagined. For Jace, it was the chance to prove that humanity's might was not measured in size or aggression, but in heart, skill, and honor. As dawn broke over the capital, the twin suns rising over the war-torn skyline, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. A new chapter was beginning, not just for humans and Valorians, but for the very idea of peace itself. And in the center of it all, a young princess and a human warrior stood, unaware that their bond would change the fate of countless worlds. The days following the ambush were tense. The Valorian capital, though bustling with activity, carried an air of unease. The rogue warlords had been driven back, but their threat remained. Lysara moved through the city with a mixture of pride and skepticism. Pride because her people were alive and safe. Skepticism because she could not fully trust the humans and certainly not Jace. Jace, meanwhile, adjusted to the new environment with calm determination. The city was foreign to him, the architecture alien, the culture unlike anything he had experienced. Yet he did not flinch. He observed, learned, and adapted. He greeted Valorian soldiers with respect, understood the rules of their society, and even learned basic phrases in their language. His efforts did not go unnoticed. One morning, as the sun rose over the city, Lysara and Jace were summoned by the queen. The council had received intelligence that a faction of extremists still plotted against the peace. Their leader, a powerful Valorian warlord named Kale, had gathered a small army and was moving toward the capital. The queen's voice was firm but worried. "Princess, Captain, your union symbolizes hope, but hope alone will not protect us. Kale must be stopped before he reaches the city." She glanced at Jace, whose calm demeanor contrasted sharply with her anxiety. "Do you really think we can stop him?" she asked, her tone hiding her fear behind a sharp edge. Jace's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "If we work together, yes. Strategy and coordination can overcome brute force. Strength is not only in weapons or numbers, it's in skill, planning, and courage." She wanted to believe him, but had never trusted a human's capability in real combat. "We shall see," she said, her voice carrying both challenge and curiosity. That evening, they traveled to the outskirts of the city, where scouts had spotted Kale's forces. Jace moved among the soldiers, inspecting weapons, checking formations, and offering tactical advice. Valorian commanders were skeptical at first, whispering among themselves about a human daring to give orders. Yet Jace's confidence, clarity, and knowledge quickly silenced the murmurs. As night fell, the first skirmishes began. Kale's troops were fierce, striking with aggression and precision. Lysara fought at the front, her blade slicing through the enemy with skill that few could match. She had trained her entire life for battle, and yet even she could not ignore Jace's performance. He moved through the chaos with unmatched precision. He dodged attacks that would have killed an ordinary human, countered with strikes that were both elegant and deadly, and coordinated the Valorian and human soldiers around him like a master conductor leading an orchestra. Lysara's surprise grew with every encounter. The human she had mocked, the one she had believed weak and fragile, was proving himself to be extraordinary. His every action spoke of training, instinct, and intuition that went far beyond mere human capability. During a particularly intense moment, Kale's elite guards charged directly at them. Lysara prepared to block and strike, but Jace anticipated the attack. With a single leap, he intercepted the lead warrior, disarming him with a precise movement and redirecting the momentum of the others. Lysara could only watch in awe as Jace turned the tide of the charge, saving dozens of soldiers from harm. After the skirmish, Lysara could no longer hide her admiration, though she would not admit it aloud. She had grown up believing strength was determined by birthright and muscle, but Jace's display challenged everything she had known. Humans, she realized reluctantly, were capable of far more than she had ever imagined. The night did not bring rest. Scouts reported that Kale himself would lead a direct assault at dawn. Jace gathered the forces, placing human and Valorian soldiers in positions that maximized their strengths. He moved among them, giving encouragement, offering advice, and instilling a confidence that transcended language and species. Lysara followed, observing quietly. She had expected arrogance or recklessness, but Jace's leadership was different. He did not belittle anyone, he did not seek glory. Every action, every command was calculated to protect lives and achieve victory. The contrast to Kale's brute force was stark. As the first light of dawn touched the battlefield, Kale's army arrived. The clash was thunderous. Steel rang against steel, energy weapons blazed, and the ground shook beneath the feet of thousands. Lysara fought with all her skill, her blade moving faster than the eye could follow, but she also watched Jace closely. He moved like a force of nature, dodging, countering, striking with precision and strength that seemed almost beyond belief. At one point, Kale himself charged toward them, his massive frame towering over Lysara. She readied herself, expecting to be the target, but Jace stepped forward, placing himself between the princess and the warlord. The fight that followed was breathtaking. Jace moved with speed, strength, and intelligence, predicting Kale's attacks and turning them against him. Each strike was calculated, each defense precise. Valorian soldiers and humans alike watched in disbelief as this single human took on a creature they had long believed invincible. Lysara's heart raced, not with fear but with awe. She had grown up in a culture where strength was everything, where the strong ruled and the weak obeyed. And yet here was a human, a creature she had underestimated, performing feats that rivaled the greatest warriors of her people. By the end of the battle, Kale lay defeated, his forces scattered. The remaining soldiers surrendered, inspired not only by the skill of Jace, but by the coordination and leadership that had turned a potential disaster into a decisive victory. The battlefield was quiet save for the ragged breaths of those who had survived. Lysara approached Jace, her steps measured. She wanted to challenge him to find a flaw, but there was none. Instead, she felt a profound respect, tinged with disbelief. "You fought like no human I have ever seen," she admitted, her voice low, almost reverent. Jace looked at her, his expression calm. "Strength comes in many forms," he said. "It is not only about muscle or size. It is about heart, skill, and the will to protect others. That is what makes a warrior truly strong." And in that realization, a subtle change began to take root in her, a willingness to see humans not as inferior, but as equals, capable of greatness and honor. The following days were spent consolidating their victory. Jace worked with Valorian commanders to repair defenses, train soldiers, and plan for any further threats. Lysara observed and assisted, her skepticism slowly giving way to curiosity and admiration. She could not deny that his methods worked. Valorian and human soldiers began to trust him, seeing a leader who valued their lives and their abilities. During a quiet moment, Lysara found herself walking alongside Jace. The city was calm, and the sun reflected off the crystal spires in dazzling patterns. She could not resist asking, "Why do you fight so differently from us? You do not seek glory, nor do you command through fear. And yet, you achieve more than any Valorian warrior could." "I have learned that strength is not measured by dominance, but by how much you can protect those who cannot protect themselves." That night, as the twin moons rose over the city, Lysara lay awake, thinking of Jace. The human she had married to end the war was not what she expected. He was far more than that. He was a warrior, a leader, and perhaps, she realized reluctantly, someone who could teach her a new understanding of strength. Jace, in his quarters, reviewed maps and battle reports. He knew the war was not yet over, that threats remained on multiple fronts, but he also knew that something had changed. The humans and Valorians had seen what was possible when courage, skill, and honor came together, and Lysara, despite her pride, had begun to see it too. The events of these days had done more than defend the city. They had begun to change perceptions. The legend of the human warrior who fought with skill, heart, and intelligence spread quickly. Whispers grew louder, stories traveled fast, and soon, even those skeptical of peace began to wonder if perhaps humans were not so weak after all. For Lysara, the transformation was personal. She could no longer dismiss Jace as fragile or unworthy. She had seen his courage, his strength, and his wisdom, and though she would not admit it aloud, she was beginning to feel something she had never felt before, a growing admiration, a respect that went beyond duty or politics. The first battle had been won, but the war was not yet over. Challenges awaited, more dangerous than before. Yet, with Jace by her side, Lysara felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this human, whom she had wed reluctantly, could indeed be the force that changed not just her life, but the fate of the galaxy itself. And so, as the twin moons shone over the city, the human and the Valorian princess prepared for what lay ahead. Allies and enemies watched closely, for the legend of a human who fought like a god was only beginning to grow. The calm after the recent battle was short-lived. Intelligence reports poured in, each more alarming than the last. Kale, the rogue Valorian warlord, was not finished. Though defeated in the skirmish outside the capital, he had retreated to gather reinforcements, his ambition to overthrow the queen and disrupt the fragile alliance burning brighter than ever. His army was growing, and this time there was no warning, only the threat of a full-scale assault. Princess Lysara stood on the balcony of the royal palace, her eyes scanning the horizon. The city below bustled with preparations, soldiers marching, defenses being reinforced, and civilians seeking safety. She felt a mixture of fear and determination. The weight of her responsibilities pressed heavily on her shoulders. Every decision she made could mean life or death for thousands, and failure was not an option. Jace approached silently, his presence calm yet commanding. He had been reviewing reports, consulting with Valorian strategists, and planning the defense with meticulous care. "They will arrive at dawn," he said simply, his tone steady. "Kale has learned from his last defeat. He will attack with full force. Strategy and preparation are as important as strength. I have studied their formations, their weapons, and their tactics. We can use their aggression against them." Slowly, she realized that his calm presence was as much a weapon as his combat skills. As night fell, Jace led a small force to the outskirts, where scouts had reported Kale's reinforcements. Lysara followed reluctantly, her hand never leaving the hilt of her blade. She watched as Jace moved among the soldiers, issuing orders with quiet authority, correcting formations, and offering encouragement. Even the most skeptical Valorian commanders found themselves following his instructions without question. "You have a way with them," Lysara said quietly. "Even the strongest Valorian soldier seemed to trust your judgment more than their own leaders." Kale's army advanced, a massive force of heavily armed Valorian soldiers, their weapons glowing with energy. Lysara and Jace's forces met them head-on, the battlefield erupting into chaos. Steel clashed against steel, and energy blasts illuminated the night sky. Lysara fought with skill honed over years, her movements precise, her strikes deadly. Yet she could not ignore Jace. He moved like a force of nature, dodging attacks that would have killed an ordinary human, and countering with precision and speed that left even the Valorians in awe. Every action he took was calculated to protect lives, maintain morale, and turn the enemy's aggression against them. At one point, Kale himself led a charge directly toward the center of their line. Lysara readied herself, expecting to face him, but Jace stepped forward, placing himself between Kale and the soldiers. The clash was breathtaking. Kale swung with brute strength, but Jace anticipated each strike, deflecting and countering with flawless technique. With every movement, he saved lives, defended his allies, and turned the battle in their favor. Lysara watched, unable to hide her admiration. The human she had once mocked, the one she had married reluctantly, was proving himself not just a capable warrior, but a legend in the making. His courage, skill, and tactical brilliance inspired the soldiers around him. Valorians who had doubted humans began to fight with renewed energy, their morale boosted by the presence of a leader who understood both strategy and compassion. Hours passed, the battle raging across the open plains. Lysara and Jace fought side by side, their coordination flawless. The princess began to see the human not just as a partner in duty, but as someone she could trust with her life. She had expected weakness. Instead, she saw strength beyond her imagination, strength tempered with honor and wisdom. During a particularly intense moment, a group of Kale's soldiers threatened a cluster of Valorian children who had been evacuated to a safe area. Without hesitation, Jace charged, his movements fluid and precise. He intercepted the attackers, disarming them and shielding the children. Lysara followed, assisting him, and together they ensured that every child reached safety. The queen's niece, a young girl named Mivara, watched in awe from behind the palace walls. "He is like a god," she whispered to her attendants. "A human who fights with the strength of 1,000 warriors." Jace had anticipated every move, countered every tactic, and turned the enemy's strength into their weakness. With a final, decisive strike, Kale was forced to retreat, his army scattered and broken. The battlefield was silent, save for the heavy breathing of those who had survived. Lysara approached Jace, her armor scorched and her hair disheveled, yet her eyes shone with newfound respect. "You fought like no human I have ever seen," she admitted, her voice low, almost reverent. Jace looked at her, calm as ever. "Strength is not only in power or size," he said. "It is in courage, skill, and the will to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is what makes a warrior truly strong." She had grown up believing humans were fragile, unworthy, and weak. Jace had shattered every one of those assumptions, and in that realization, a subtle change began to take root in her, a willingness to see humans not as inferior, but as equals capable of greatness and honor. The aftermath of the battle was filled with cautious celebration. The city had been saved, the extremist threat diminished, and Valorian and human soldiers alike praised Jace for his leadership and bravery. The princess's council, once skeptical of the human warrior, now looked to him with a mixture of awe and respect. In private moments, Lysara began to reflect on her feelings. She had married Jace to end a war, not expecting anything more. Yet she could not ignore the admiration, trust, and perhaps the first flicker of affection that had begun to grow within her. He had proven himself in ways that went far beyond physical strength. His intelligence, his honor, and his compassion had touched even the proudest Valorian hearts. The following days were spent consolidating their victory. Jace worked tirelessly with Valorian commanders to repair defenses, train soldiers, and plan for any further threats. Lysara observed and assisted, learning from him and slowly, questioning her own assumptions about strength, honor, and leadership. During a quiet evening, they walked together along the palace gardens, the twin moons casting silver light over the crystalline structures. Lysara spoke softly, almost as if thinking aloud. I believed humans were weak. I believed they were nothing compared to us. Yet, you have shown me something I did not expect, something greater than I could have imagined. It is about heart, courage, and the willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That is what truly matters. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Kale's forces were regrouping elsewhere, intelligence suggested, and Jace knew that this battle was only the beginning. Yet he also knew that the bond he had begun to forge with Lysara and the trust he had earned among Valorian soldiers could turn the tide of the war in ways no single battle ever could. For Lysara, the experience had changed her. She had seen the limits of her assumptions, the power of humility, and the depth of courage that humans could possess. And though she would not admit it aloud, she felt a growing admiration and trust for the man she had married to end a war. As the twin moons rose over the Valorian capital, the city seemed to hold its breath. The story of the human who fought like a god spread quickly. Soldiers told tales of his bravery, civilians whispered his name with awe, and even distant observers began to question their long-held beliefs about humans. Lysara stood at the balcony once more, watching Jace train Valorian soldiers in the courtyard below. He moved with precision, strength, and skill that seemed almost supernatural, yet always tempered with care and wisdom. She could not deny it any longer. She had married not just a human but a legend in the making, a warrior who could change the fate of her people, her world, and perhaps the galaxy itself. And as she watched him, she understood that the war was far from over. Challenges awaited, greater than any they had faced. But with Jace by her side, she felt a flicker of hope, a hope that humans and Valorians could finally see each other as equals, capable of cooperation, respect, and perhaps one day lasting peace. The legend of the human warrior was growing, and Lysara realized that this was only the beginning. The battles ahead would test their courage, their skill, and their bond. But together, they could face anything, and the galaxy would never be the same. The morning air over the Valorian capital was crisp and quiet, yet the tension was palpable. Reports continued to arrive of Kale's scattered forces attempting to regroup on distant planets. Though the princess and Jace had achieved a significant victory, the war was not yet fully over. Every council meeting, every patrol, every report reminded them that danger still lurked. Princess Lysara walked beside Jace through the palace corridors, her steps measured but her mind racing. She had spent days observing him, learning from him, and realizing that the man she had married for duty and politics was unlike anyone she had ever known. He was patient, strong, intelligent, and above all, humble, a combination of qualities she had never expected in a human. "You've changed so much of this city in so little time," she said softly, her eyes scanning the bustling courtyards below. "The soldiers follow you without hesitation, Even the council trusts your judgment. I never thought humans could do this. And you gave me that chance, not just to lead, but to prove what humanity can achieve when it works together with others. The Queen called them both to the council chambers. The meeting was urgent. Intelligence indicated that Kale's remaining forces were moving toward an unprotected sector of the capital. If they were allowed to regroup there, the war could reignite with devastating consequences. We must strike now, the Queen declared, her voice firm. If we wait, we risk losing everything we have fought for. Jace moved with precision, issuing orders, training troops and planning tactics that would use the terrain, the soldiers' strengths, and the element of surprise to their advantage. Lysara assisted him, learning and adapting as she observed his strategies. She realized that his strength was not only in combat but in his ability to inspire others, to unite disparate forces under a single purpose. The day of the battle arrived. Kale's army, unaware of the full force preparing for them, advanced confidently. They believed their leader's cunning and aggression would be enough to break the defenders, but Jace had anticipated their every move. The battlefield was set, traps laid, and soldiers positioned in ways that maximized their effectiveness. As the enemy approached, Jace and Lysara stood together at the front line. Lysara's heart raced, not with fear but with anticipation. She had witnessed Jace's skill before, but this battle would test him and her in ways they had never faced. The clash began with a thunderous roar. Weapons fired, energy blasts lit the sky, and soldiers charged with unwavering determination. Lysara fought with precision, her blade striking true, but her eyes kept darting to Jace. He moved through the chaos like a force of nature, defending the vulnerable, countering attacks with skill that seemed almost impossible, and directing the soldiers around him with clarity and purpose. Kale himself appeared on the battlefield, his massive frame leading a charge of elite soldiers. Lysara readied herself, expecting to engage him directly, but Jace once again stepped forward, placing himself between Kale and the Valorian defenders. The fight that followed was breathtaking. Jace's movements were a combination of speed, strength, and intelligence that left even the seasoned Valorian warriors in awe. Every strike was precise, every defense calculated, and every decision saved lives. Lysara fought alongside him, her respect growing with every passing moment. She had once believed humans were weak, incapable of true strength, yet here was a man proving otherwise. Not only could he fight with unmatched skill, but he inspired everyone around him to rise above fear, to fight with honor and courage. As the battle raged, Jace spotted a group of enemy soldiers attempting to flank Lysara's unit. Without hesitation, he charged, intercepting them with extraordinary agility and precision. His actions protected dozens of soldiers and civilians alike, and even Lysara could not help but feel a deep admiration for him. Finally, Kale's forces began to falter. Jace had anticipated every tactic, countered every move, and turned the enemy's aggression against them. The rogue warlord was cornered, his army scattered and defeated. Lysara and Jace approached together, ready to face him directly if necessary. Kale, realizing his defeat, attempted a desperate attack, but Jace, calm and precise, intercepted him with a series of moves so fast and skillful that the enemy could not respond. Lysara watched in awe as Jace disarmed Kale, ending the battle with decisive authority. The battlefield fell silent, the surviving soldiers looking on with respect and disbelief. The city rejoiced. The threat of Kale and his rogue forces was eliminated, and the peace that Jace and Lysara had fought so hard to achieve was finally within reach. Soldiers and citizens alike praised Jace, not only for his combat skill but for his leadership, intelligence, and unwavering courage. Valorians who had doubted humans began to see them in a new light, recognizing that strength came in many forms. In the aftermath, Lysara approached Jace privately. The battle was over, but the emotions and lessons remained. You were incredible," she admitted softly. I never imagined a human could be like this. You are more than I could have ever expected. Strength is not measured by size or aggression, he said. It is measured by courage, skill, and the willingness to protect others. That is what makes a warrior truly strong. Yet here he was, a human who had not only survived but led, inspired, and changed the hearts of thousands. The following days were filled with celebration, diplomacy, and reconstruction. Jace worked alongside Valorian commanders to repair the damage caused by the war, train soldiers, and strengthen the alliance between humans and Valorians. Lysara assisted him, learning from his methods and recognizing the wisdom in his actions. Together, they represented a symbol of unity, hope, and strength to the galaxy. The Queen held a public ceremony to honor the efforts of both human and Valorian soldiers. Lysara stood beside Jace, her pride and admiration for him evident to all. She addressed the crowd, her voice clear and commanding. Today, we celebrate not just victory, but the unity of our peoples. Through courage, honor, and cooperation, we have proven that strength lies not in division, but in working together. And we honor a human who has shown us the true meaning of valor and leadership. His focus remained on the people, on the soldiers, and on the promise of lasting peace. In the quiet moments following the ceremony, Lysara found herself watching Jace as he trained Valorian soldiers in combat techniques. His movements were fluid, precise, and powerful, yet always tempered with care and consideration. She realized that the human she had once mocked, the one she had married reluctantly, was now someone she deeply respected and trusted. The princess approached him, her steps measured but her gaze unwavering. "I have seen many warriors in my life," she said softly. "But you are different. You fight with strength, yes, but also with heart and wisdom. You have changed my understanding of what it means to be powerful." She had married him to end a war, but she had gained far more: a partner, a teacher, and perhaps, in time, something deeper. She understood now that strength alone did not define a warrior. It was courage, wisdom, honor, and the desire to protect others that made a person truly legendary. The galaxy, once divided and filled with distrust, now had a new symbol of hope. Jace, the human warrior who fought like a god, had not only changed the course of a war but had also reshaped perceptions of humanity across the stars. Valorians and humans alike began to see each other as equals, capable of cooperation, respect, and shared purpose. As the sun set over the Valorian capital, Lysara stood beside Jace on the palace balcony. The city below shimmered with life, the scars of war slowly healing, and the citizens looking to the future with hope. She watched him spar with Valorian soldiers, his movements flawless, his strength tempered by wisdom and care. For Lysara, the journey had been transformative. She had learned that humans were far more capable than she had ever imagined. She had seen courage, skill, and honor embodied in a single person, and she realized that she had married not just a warrior, but a force capable of changing the galaxy. Jace paused and turned to her, a faint smile on his face. "The war is over for now," he said. "But the real work begins, building a future where humans and Valorians can live in peace together." The people cheered, the soldiers stood proud, and the galaxy, once torn by war, looked toward a brighter future. At the center of it all stood a human and a Valorian princess, united not just by duty but by trust, courage, and the promise of a new era. And so, the legend of Jace, the human warrior who fought like a god, was cemented. He had proven that strength was not merely in muscle or aggression, but in heart, honor, courage, and wisdom. The war had ended, but the legacy of his deeds would inspire generations across the galaxy. For Lysara, the transformation was personal as well as political. She had learned to see beyond prejudice, to recognize true strength, and to value the courage of a human who had changed her world. Together they stood at the dawn of peace, ready to guide the galaxy into a future shaped not by fear, but by hope, unity, and the legendary strength of a human who had proven himself beyond measure. The story of their union, their courage, and their partnership would be told for generations, a tale of honor, bravery, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. And as the twin moons cast their glow across the Valorian capital, the princess and the human warrior looked to the stars, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead together.